Well, welcome everybody who's on the call. My name is Karen Hobson, and I'm the Leadership Chair for Colorado PTA. And I'm delighted to have our National President, Leslie Boggs, with us to present the workshop along with Sharon Goldblatt. So I'm going to stop sharing right now so that they can take it away with their workshop.
Good morning, everyone. We're so glad to have you here today. Sharon's going to put up our PowerPoint here in a moment, but we're really excited to see all of you here for such a riveting conversation this morning about our Standards of Affiliation. So we are very, very pleased to have you here.
So good morning, and thanks, Les. If you didn't know, Leslie is the current National PTA President, as Karen said. She's also a past president of New Mexico PTA and Texas PTA. She's got more than 20 years of leadership experience, as you can well imagine, and it goes from every single level of PTA. She received her certification of nonprofit leadership and management and is a certified DISC trainer and a member of the John Maxwell's President's Advisory Council. And I'm Sharon Goldblatt. I am also a past president of Texas PTA. I'm actually the acting president of Vermont PTA right now and the chair of the National PTA Field Service Committee. So we're really happy to have you here this morning. Wish we were there with you, but we could bring you a little sunshine and some warmer weather maybe, but I'd love to be there. So let's get started. Just sets a couple of standards. We are going to let you ask questions if you want to while we're doing the presentation. Put them in the chat box. We'll also have a Q&A at the end, but we'll try to look at the chat box as we go along and try to check on things and make sure you have a good understanding. Go ahead and mute your microphones for background noises, but we'll be able to talk to you in a little while. And love to see your smiling faces, so keep your cameras on. We will put our email addresses in the chat box, and we also have a screen at the end that will have them also. So we're here to help you. So hopefully we have some good information for you. So let's get started, Leslie.
So I can just imagine all of you wondering why two gals from Texas are actually here talking to you about the Standards of Affiliation for national and also for Colorado, right? I mean, what do we know and how can we help you all? So here's what we'd like you to understand about a few things. National PTA charters or creates the state constituent association. So we all the 54 states that we have, they are chartered and created by National PTA. There are 54 Congresses, which includes the U.S. Virgin Islands, the District of Columbia, the Department of Defense Schools, and Puerto Rico. So those are the state constituencies that we have at this moment. The state PTAs charter the different divisions with the states. So all state PTAs have local PTAs, which are a foundation of our entire structure because we are a grassroots association. And some also have, much like you, councils, districts, regions, et cetera, that work between the state and the local as a support. So Colorado has 6 regions, in case you didn't know, 5 councils, and about 311 local PTAs. So it's a big job and volunteer job to be on the state board, but they have done an excellent job and are still wanting to grow even more. National PTA is directly responsible for these state PTAs, but ultimately responsibility to all of our members. So whenever we get, for instance, I do get some disgruntled members at times, we don't interfere in state business. So I will send them back to the state president. We'll talk through what we see happening and we'll give any support that we see, but we really don't try not to interfere in state business. So when you join your local PTA, You also join your state and your national associations. So we are one PTA. I know that's hard to think of at times because everyone seems to have a different title, but remember the PTA at the end means we are one voice in one association. As leaders, we are also responsible for our members, but we are also responsible for our associations at all levels. Just as we take responsibility for our child, their friends, the children on campus and beyond, remember the mission statement. And remember, and we always like to say, we are one PTA. Sharon?
Thank you, Leslie. So when you drive your car on the highway, can you drive anywhere on that road in any direction or at any speed? Well, hopefully not. There are some lines between the lanes. There's medians between the different opposing traffic, and there's speed limits. Which are based on road conditions. So there are expectations as for the drivers and limits for everything you do. There are also consequences if you don't follow the laws. So PTA is a 501c3 nonprofit association, and every PTA must follow multiple sets of rules and laws. So what takes priority? So you need to think about a hierarchy, what comes first, basically, what you need to look at when you're looking for the answers to a question of how do I do this, or what's the process for that. So on the screen, you can see, I know it's small, but there is this document. It's called the Hierarchy of Governing Documents for PTA State Constituent Associations. And you can download it on the National PTA website. And let's just talk about what that hierarchy is for you in Colorado or anywhere across the nation, actually. So as a local PTA, you can only follow your bylaws. But as you can see on the screen, you must first follow the laws of the land. So that would be federal laws, like when you have to follow your 990 for the IRS, state laws, you probably have some taxing codes and things like that. And you also have nonprofit codes that affect all corporations, nonprofit corporations within the state. And then there's your local laws and regulations. They may be things that will tell you how you need to conduct business. There may be procedures and policies that your school districts have that you have to follow. So those come first because those are the people that allow us to be PTA. Then you start with the laws of the organization. So you've got national PTAs, Colorado PTAs, and then all of the other levels of PTAs in Colorado, it's councils and local PTAs that have your governing documents. So you start with your bylaws. Then, as you know, if there's a question that's not in the bylaws, then you go to the accepted or adopted parliamentary procedure for all PTAs, and that's Robert's Rules of Order, newly revised. Then you go to policies, procedures, standing rules, whatever you call them within your PTA association. Then there's that, I know you've never heard the phrase, well, we've always done it that way, right? So sometimes there are those things that it's not in print anywhere. You don't know what to do, but somebody remembers, well, this is the way we usually do it. So you can also follow your tradition and your history. But I do recommend that you try to do something that actually puts that into writing. So the next person that follows you doesn't have to go, now what do I do? So I always recommend that you have some kind of rules, policies and procedures, standing rules or whatever that will allow you to keep that history in a safe place and have it as you move forward. So always put it in writing whenever possible. And I just want to say, based on this workshop, that the standards of affiliation are a part of your documentation, your organizational policies. So they've been adopted by National PTA for the state PTAs, as Leslie said a moment ago, and then Colorado has adopted standards for your locals and your councils within Colorado.
So why is it important for state PTAs and national PTA to adopt standards of affiliation for their constituent associations? So think about that for just a minute and put your answers in the chat box. Why do you think that's important? Why do we even go down this road? Well, it's actually because it's an expectations for all PTAs, right? There you go. Stay out of trouble. That's true. To ensure consistent communication, that's another one. Accountability is another one. And it's important to be like consistent and have consistent communication. The next one is if everyone did something different, at the very least, it would get confusing when change of leadership happened. So it's much like, you know, we always like to relate it to another franchise within our nation. And the first one that comes to us, because I love Chick-fil-A, is their franchise. So whenever you go to a franchise, everything looks the same, kind of smells the same, that type of thing. But within our association, every school is different because every community is different. So you'll see some differences, but the brand stays the same. The communication should be the same. The mission and the focus should be the same as well. So here are some nonprofit governance best practices, right? Let's go to the next screen. The members, through the Colorado or National PTA bylaws, give authority to PTA's board to adopt the Standards of Affiliation policy. So that's where this comes from. It comes from the board, a direction of the board. The national policy only applies to state PTAs. So your state PTA has adopted a policy for your local and council PTAs. So we don't tell Colorado what their standards are for their locals. They kind of figure that out within their own state association, what they feel they need to communicate effectively. The policy standards are based on best practices to ensure PTAs operate efficiently and giving them the authority to use the PTA name and brand. That's really important because that's really why we're all one, because the name and the brand is consistent. The standards ensure, again, that our reputation is protected. Because the standards of affiliation affect the constituents, they must clearly be communicated and explained. So we don't just put them out there and expect the Colorado Board of Directors to just like follow them automatically. No, we give support, and that's why Sharon, Chair of Field Service, is there to help them figure them out if there's any questions at all. And so it's all about that support as well as you get from Colorado as well. National PTA not only posts the complete policy on the website, but also provides training and supplemental materials like glossary and sample templates to follow for required processes like annual financial reporting and FAQs. So there's lots of things there on our website. So the standards of affiliation are like a contact between the parent association and its affiliates. National PTA actually really tries to act as just, it's kind of like an agreement, I'll say. It's a memorandum, we have one, and it's called a memorandum of understanding, or an MOU. So if you've heard that acronym, that's what that means. It's actually where the state president signs and the treasurer signs in order to confirm understanding of what's provided and what is expected. So we don't just put it out there and hope somebody reads it. We actually do have an action coming from the state president and state treasurer. Like every contact, it details the expectations for both parties as well as consequences. The standard of affiliations are adopted again by the board of directors, and only the board can change the policy. So we constantly have communications between states and are reevaluating our standards constantly, but then get back to the state boards if anything changes at all. So it's all about best practices for nonprofit governance and to support our PTA mission. So we have a question for you. Going to launch a poll. Here we go. Please respond to the poll. Your answers are anonymous. So what person or group is responsible for ensuring a PTA stays in compliance with PTA SOA? Is it the state president, the PTA treasurer, the PTA board of directors, or a combination of all? So this is interesting because I'm not surprised by the results at all. Are you, Sharon?
Not really.
Not really. So just know that the answer actually is C. So it's all about your board of directors, which is kind of a combination of all of them. I get that, but it's every person on the board is responsible for following the standards of affiliation or the expectations from your state to local. So it's not all about one person or two people or three. It's really about the board of directors, and everyone needs to be familiar with the standards or expectations of the SOA. And it's about responsibility, right? The state board is the legal entity running the association between general meetings, just like your local is the entity running between general meetings. And so it's all about the board or entity notifying the state PTA goes out of compliance, or even the state getting with your board. And so you have to learn to delegate, right, Sharon? Don't you see this often, that they do delegate this responsibility?
I do. I definitely do. And it's just, you just really can't delegate everything, can you? If it's your board's responsibility, then it's your board's, your board must do it. And the reason we say board, and the reason why the answer was C, is that it is a full board responsibility. Yes, you can assign those duties to one person or another, but when push comes to shove, the board has that responsibility, because you have the responsibility based on what you were elected by your members. So if you say that the president does this or the membership chair does that, that's fine, but you should have some kind of accountability that it comes back to the board, and you review it on a regular basis and say, where are we in this process? Has it been done? Has it not been done? You can delegate a task, but you can't delegate responsibility.
So we've got a screen that we're going to put up for you, and I hope most of you are familiar with our new membership campaign. And Sharon and I have made fun of this one because we both looked at this and go, and this was and I'm just going to put this out there. There is no wrong way to PTA for an individual that wants to join your association, right? They can do it for their child, they can advocate, they can, invest in you, they can donate, they can do lots of things. But there is actually, don't you think, a wrong way to PTA? What do y'all think? I think we've probably experienced some ways. Yeah, if you'll put a thumbs up if you think that's true or false. True is up. False, just don't put anything on your screen. But it is very interesting about how we function as PTAs. You can see great leadership. But again, you can see also flawed leadership to a point where it really destructs a PTA and really doesn't follow the nonprofit governance laws, right? So you have to be careful and just consider marking your PTA board calendar or assigning each task to an individual for your standards to happen, and a backup person, and then creating a way for that person to check in and let the board know the task is completed. So it's all about reporting back. We can delegate all we want to, but if we don't have someone reporting to the board has no idea what's going on. So it's the board's responsibility to ask for that information if they've not received it. So just remember, always ask, are we in compliance? Are we doing the things and expectations that we've been given? Sharon?
Yeah, and I just want to say another thing. I do, as Leslie says, we deal with within my committee for National PTA, we deal with all the state congresses. And so I see in many cases that there have been standards that have been set by a state PTA, and there was an expectation, well, that the members should be part of the process too, and the members should be able to know whether their local PTA is in good standing or not. Well, I think that's right. I think that is definitely right. But again, going back, it's not the members' responsibility to make sure it's your local PTA is in good standing. It is your position on your board that takes that responsibility because you were elected by your members. I just wanted to underscore that. So a lot of times we have to answer the question, why PTA? So we have things that are automatic when you become a state PTA, especially under the National PTA umbrella. And these are the things that we show our state PTAs that they have as a benefit and privileges as a state PTA. So basically you have the right to use all of this, the trademarks, the PTA, PTSA, all of those names and so forth, Parent Teacher Association. You have access to a lot of different kinds of data. You have the ability to collect dues. That's not automatic. That comes through that affiliation. That the state PTAs charter the PTAs, new PTAs and such. You have the ability to be a representative, a delegate at the National PTA Convention. And then there's all the access to whether it's resources, training, programs, funding to state events and things like that. The things that come through our sponsors and our partners, our grants, our programs that come through those avenues. And then finally, you have what Leslie is doing this weekend. You have a representation from National PTA as she does or I don't know if you have or have already done the keynote for Colorado PTA, but all of these things are important. And I know you recognize the Reflections name. So we want you to have those. And so that's why it's important for the state PTA to stay in compliance. The one thing I didn't say was to let your voice be heard, and that was to be able to submit resolutions to National PTA to be voted on by the delegates. And so with Colorado PTA, you have the same kind of list that when you become your local PTA or your council PTA, that affiliation, the use of the trademarks, the ability to collect dues in the PTA name, representation at the convention here this weekend. Access to all the resources, all the training, everything that they're providing in the way of support and services. Again, the ability to submit resolutions, and then all of the awards, grants, scholarships, and activities they have. These are things that you, as a PTA in good standing, have the ability to take advantage of. Now, I just want to go ahead and say you may be aware of other campuses that without PTAs, then they have what we call unaffiliated parent groups. They don't have these benefits. They don't have the benefits of networking from local to local, to council to state, and from state to state within the national framework. So that is one of the key things, that we are not alone. We are together. As Leslie said, we are one PTA. So that's the key to making the huge difference. You do not have to do it alone. You do not have to reinvent the wheel, and you have the benefit of so many millions of voices to add to your own when there's something that needs to be done. So let's have a little fun for a minute.
Yay.
So you may need to turn up your screen.
I like fun. So that's our little video this morning. There is a definite need for compliance, and there needs to be a plan, and that's what we've been talking all along about. So our plan at National PTA is, again, the Standards of Affiliation, what we call the SOA policy
for the state PTAs. As we said, we don't interfere in what happens at the local and the council level, but we directly set the expectations for the state PTAs. So a lot of these will look the same to you, but we've got some additional things. So when you look at this list, you can see first we deal with the federal law. So going back to that hierarchy of law, that's key for us all. So we have to file that 990 annually as a state PTA, and then have that financial security, accountability, and transparency, so that there needs to be a financial report. That report you normally see at your conventions as part of the transparency that Colorado has for you. But we also ask for that to be filed with National PTA. 3 is the first reference to the name of PTA, and this applies to the name being in the Articles of the Incorporation for the state. And then 4 and 5 are basic nonprofit governance best practices. You have to be governed by a board, and your state law says what the minimum number of board members are. And then you adopt the bylaws when you are formed, and you must adhere to them. And if you're not actually doing what the bylaws say, then you must revise or amend them. So whatever the bylaws are, you have to follow them, but make sure that they are reflective of your practice in everyday life. As we said earlier, number 6, that's that MOU. That is our agreement between the state and the National PTA. And the rest of these are truly the affiliation requirements between the state and the National PTA. So 7, they must operate according to our vision, our mission, our values, our policies, and no actions can be taken in conflict. That is truly making sure that you are a reflection of who we are. And I just want to take a moment to just underscore the fact that when you say no actions in conflict, so National PTA adopts resolutions that are brought forward to the delegates at convention and approved by those delegates. There are also things that we need to do as National PTA, as a board of the directors. And I'm not on the board now, I was formerly on the board, but when you're on the board of directors for National PTA, there are things that must have immediacy. You need to do that in between conventions, and those are called the position statements. So when those are adopted, and those are basically the legal statements that come from National PTA, there are things that we have to do that are global, and sometimes they're a little bit generic in some cases, and so they may not fall in exactly in the way what you do things within your state. So that when National PTA adopts these things, there may be some conflict that happens within your state legislature. So the standards say that we recognize that, and you cannot take any action in conflict with those, but you can either remain silent or just not take an action at all. So I dwelt a little bit on that because that is one of the things we see across the nation that sometimes comes into effect. And you may see that too within your PTA in Colorado. The state PTA may adopt something that maybe you don't understand, maybe you don't agree with entirely, but it is a position that is taken by your state PTA, and you as a local PTA or a council PTA cannot do anything that conflicts that. And I really love that we have them, because it allows me, when a legislator calls or some elected official calls and says, well, what do we do here? Or even a council or a state PTA says, what do we do in this situation, then we can say, go back to your position statements, go back to your resolutions, and that gives you the basis and that gives you the voice to move forward. 8 is also very, very important, and that's to use the branding properly. And we want to make sure that whatever the trademarks and so forth are being used, even down to, you know, sometimes it comes to colors of the logos and stuff like that. But we want to have that one voice, but also that one look, and so that we can be identified correctly. 9 is, as you know, extremely important that we prioritize membership. It needs to be a priority based on recruitment, retention, and growth. And then we also ask that there needs to be at least one person that is responsible. As you know, every member of your board is responsible for membership and membership growth, but we need to have someone that is monitoring that. So it could be your president, it could be a chair or VP or something, but it's important to know who that person is so that we can communicate. Report dues monthly, and we do that electronically. We also ask the state PTAs to give us a list of all their constituent associations, their locals and councils or whatever, and a list of their officers. That is something that has been so key for us in this pandemic, because we have now been able to know that we are doing the best we can to communicate with you at your local level. Where we've struggled with that in the past, we're doing better actually in the pandemic. So I hope that continues. And then finally, we do provide a state board training that must occur with the board of directors every 2 years. So that's what National does. And these are your standards to remain in good standing within Colorado PTA. Looks a little bit the same, doesn't it? So you've got to submit your dues. You've got to have your bylaws, and they are approved through the procedures of Colorado PTA. You need to purchase insurance. You need to submit your officers list. You submit a copy of your financial reporting, whatever it is you do annually. It's probably like we based on your income. And then file that 990. There's that hierarchy of laws again. Then you need to register, it says if required, register with the Colorado Secretary of State's office, attend training, just like we do for the state PTAs. And I love it that in your definition of training, it does include the National PTA e-learning. I hope you do take advantage of that, whether it's because you have to meet this qualification, or because you want to expand your knowledge and growth, because we've got a lot of information on the website through the e-learning, and hope you take advantage of it. And then finally, any other criteria that is necessary federally, state, or Colorado, or within the association. So I'm just curious, we've been talking a lot. Are any of these things particularly difficult for you to comply with within the state? You can go ahead and put that in your chat box. Leslie, I have trouble seeing chat when I'm running the PowerPoint. So do we have any answers?
No, not yet.
There was just a question about number 7, but Karen answered it as well.
Okay, perfect. Karen, do you want to just go ahead and explain that so that everybody hears it?
So the question—
Actually, it's 25,000, by the way.
Oh, I'm glad our treasurer's on here.
Yeah, it's the Colorado Solicitations Act, and if you have to register with the Colorado Secretary of State if you have more than 25. If you bring in more than 25,000 in gross receipts.
Okay.
And you have to file an annual report with them for that.
Okay.
Sorry, the 50,000 was for the 990 stuff.
Right, the long form. Yeah. It also, there's a question about some units don't do training. And so I will tell you, I was in an interview the other day with a national publication, and we were talking about the effectiveness of PTAs and what we can see and how successful they are. For me, what I've learned is the most successful PTAs go to training. And if they decide they know everything and they bow out, like I don't need to go next year because I've already been there, already done that within 3 years they fail. So it's an interesting process to watch and try to communicate to your locals the importance of them really getting familiar with us as an association, what the responsibilities are of their officers. And if they do that and continue to do it, because things change, right? We don't always do things the same way year to year. And especially after this pandemic, there is going to be some definite changes. And so everyone needs to be communicating effectively with one another and learning together, and always understanding that learning is really important in our association, just like it is with any leadership.
Thank you, Leslie. That is so true. And there are so many facets of what we have to learn. I have to know in dealing with the state PTAs, I have to know a lot about, and I'm not a lawyer and I didn't go to law school, but I mean, I need to look at those state laws in order to help the states in many cases and just direct them. We do recommend in many cases that they get an attorney to help them, maybe with their bylaws, maybe with following or interpreting the law. But all of those things change. And even if they don't change, the way we operate changes. So that's just what Leslie was saying, whether it's a pandemic or not, we have to evolve. We cannot do things the way we did it when my mother was in PTA. So it doesn't just work that way. So learning and growing is just basic for every human being, I hope, but take advantage of what you can.
Okay.
So then just talking a minute about, well, okay, I didn't do what I was supposed to do, or I missed the deadline for when I was supposed to have it done. What happens? What are the repercussions? So at the national level, the state PTAs would receive a notification, a reminder of that, what they've missed, and given time to complete whatever steps were necessary. If those steps aren't completed, then they may go to a different, what we call phases. It could be intervention or probation or restructuring phases of noncompliance. And in those cases, National PTA, normally Leslie, as the National PTA president, assigns a support representative or support team, depending on the situation, to make sure that state PTA has the understanding, the knowledge, the guidance, and the support they need in order to get into compliance. Because we don't ask them to do anything that shouldn't already have been done. And so if there is that challenge for them, it may be that in many cases, especially right now in the pandemic, we just don't have the leadership capacity to get it done. So we'll help them find ways to get around it, or maybe even help them find that leadership in order to move forward. And then at the very, very rarest cases, and the last step we want to take, we can, National PTA could remove a state PTA's charter, but that's extremely rare. And with Colorado's policy, there's also a process for, I think you call it delinquent and provisional phases.
Yes.
And that could result in some losses of privileges. So some of those privileges that we listed earlier. That does happen in the national PTAs when they would work with the state's cases too. What normally happens on almost every situation is it affects the state and how they operate in giving them that extra support, but it doesn't take away the privileges at the local level. And but again, Colorado is really working with you at the local level. So sometimes you might lose the your ability to eligibility for awards or scholarships or even entries in the Reflections program. So Karen, did you want to add anything about that here before we move forward?
No, just that we do encourage people to stay in good standing so it doesn't impact our students that want to participate in a program like Reflections. And sometimes we get entries from units that are not in good standing, and that's kind of the crux, to get them in good standing so they don't penalize a student because the adults didn't do what they should do.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important for everyone to know, is that, I always tell people we are not the PTA police, but we are actually here for support and making sure that you're successful. So most of what you're seeing from your state and from national is just a compliance and making sure that you don't get into trouble with the IRS or with nonprofit law or with your state law, because you don't want to be called, and that can be really, really expensive at times.
That's exactly right. Please, we try to explain this to the states, and I hope they understand. And I'm just going to try to do that for Colorado. Don't think of this as being punitive, especially if you go into one of these phases where you're may be losing something. Just as we said earlier, just stay on top of things the best you can. We don't want you to lose those privileges. We want you to be in compliance, because compliance truly does equal a healthy PTA. That's just the bottom line for me. And you're doing things right, and you can get that off your desk, and you can focus on what we all want to be focusing on, and that's our children. So simple things like not filing your IRS 990 for 3 consecutive years can make you lose your PTA, your nonprofit status. And like Leslie said, that would take time and effort, a lot of effort, and money to get that back again. So do the best you can to stay in compliance.
So there was a comment in the chat when you were talking about state charters, and we heard that's happened in Maryland, and seeing if you could explain anything of that situation.
Well, I'll start, and then certainly Sharon can follow up. But what you see and what happened within the association was that they were not following their bylaws. They were not following what the delegates voted on during their convention. There were some mishaps, and we go through all the steps of our SOA. Remember, we do a probation, we do an intervention, we assign a support team, and we really, really try to help them get back to where they need to be. But in this case, there was not the willingness to do what they needed to do. So we had no other choice. We worked for them for almost a little over a year, Sharon?
Yes, we did.
And trying to get them back into compliance. And so it was a very interesting, it's not something that any of us wanted to do. It's just unfortunate when leaders don't want to work nor protect the brand. And there were just some things that we couldn't allow to happen anymore.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Well, that's where we're going right now, is questions.
Well, and there is a question about what happened to the local units. They are now underneath national. We are in the middle of trying to organize a new state constituency for Maryland. So they'll eventually get back there. We're hoping sooner than later. We're just waiting. We filed that process and waiting on the paperwork to be approved. So as soon as that's done, they'll get back underneath a state. But it's a process.
So that was my question. And so the local units, though, they can still operate. I mean, that's, it's because you want that. I mean, so as long, just because the state organization isn't, where it should be, and, there's a process to get there. The local units are still being able to operate and do all the things, right?
Right. And that's our goal, is to protect the members and their rights, no matter what that looks like. And so there is a provision within our bylaws to bring them underneath national. And so that's what we've done at this point. Other questions? Well, what I really hope all of you kind of take away from this is that you've got a tremendous amount of support. And that's why I know it sounds like these are all rules. And I have to tell you, your president is not exactly the best rule follower. So we try our best to get you back to where we are. And we've worked with Colorado to get them where they need to be. And it was a really good collaboration of leaders working through a process, and we came to, and it was resolved very quickly. And that's usually how it works with every other state. We give them the support they need. They come to us whenever they need us. They certainly look to us for leadership and input, but we try our best not to interfere in state business. So there is that fine line, just as Colorado doesn't really like to interfere in your business as a local. They really want to watch you learn and grow and thrive for what works in your community, because everyone is different. So I think that's really what I want y'all to take away from here, is that we really are working this way to make you successful and hopefully keep you out of trouble. As Sharon said, not being punitive, but actually a road to success.
Well, and if I can add one other thing, and that is that you do have a voice in what happens. Now, as we said, the policy and the wording in the bylaws, that is put there. Your standards are put there by your Colorado PTA board, but the bylaws, the information, the bylaws is there for amendment from time to time at your state convention. So number one, it's very important to attend these events and to ask the questions prior to, and to make your voice be heard. But also, even in the process, if the bylaws are what they are, and you must follow them. So, but that doesn't mean you can't contact someone at the council level or the state level and say, this is really hard, or this is really difficult for us to do, or we need help, or we need better understanding, or we need tools and resources, whatever it is. The communication between the local and the state is so very important. So please take advantage of the great leadership you have here in Colorado, and make sure that they are listening to you. They have the ability to listen to you, because they truly, I know these ladies and gentlemen, and in many cases, I know they want to hear from you. So please do it. Talk to them.
Sharon, thanks for saying that, because that's what I tell folks all the time when I do my workshops and trainings, is that we're here for them. I mean, we are volunteers passionate about PTA, and we want them to be successful. And if they have questions, they need to ask us. And if I don't know, I've got people I can ask. And that's the beauty of PTA, and why I'm such a believer, is because of that network and people like Elaine to correct me when I was wrong with the information. I mean, we're a team, and I like being part of the team.
And I think that's what's really important, is for everyone to understand there is no perfect leader. So I'm going to say that again. There is no perfect leader. We're all learning and growing together, right? We're going to make mistakes. That's okay, as long as you fail forward and get the help that you need, or learn how to be better in what you're doing. So always understand that there's not a perfect leader. There never is. There's always room to grow and thrive, no matter who they are. Yes, some do it better than others, but that's okay. That's why we're here, and provide you with the support, and certainly want to see you succeed in the future. Other questions?
May I ask a question?
Sure.
So I am relatively new to the PTA, and absolutely new to any sort of leadership in the PTA. And what I'm finding is that this has been great, this conference. It's been really, really enlightening, but what I'm hearing is that I have a lot of work to do to try to figure things out. So I guess my question might not even be for you ladies. It might be for somebody at the state level. But the truth is, I would love to ask questions, and I'm wondering who to ask. So is there a chart of, who to talk to about different things on the website? I've looked on the website briefly for Colorado's PTA, but I don't know it well enough to know where to go to find help.
Karen, you want to that one?
So on our website should be the screen for our board of directors. And actually, when they created that page, it actually lists everybody, whether they're on the board or not. So it also has committee chairs like myself and our bylaws committee chair, Marta Murray. But because our state is divided into regions and councils, that's a more localized support system for you. And so for you, because I know your name, you're El Paso Council PTA down in the Colorado Springs area.
Yes.
And so you would contact them first.
Okay.
And if you don't get a response, that's certainly when reach out to the state, because we are all volunteers and we do miss things once in a while. So we want to be responsive. And if you don't feel that we are, please, elevate your request to the state office and somebody will get back to you. And if not, everybody, I'm going to put my email in here. Just email me and I'll get back to you. I hope. And also I'd like to say I put the link for the evaluation in the chat box, but it was also in the email that you got to log into the workshop. So
Thank you.
Please let us know.
Well, and I wanted to also, if there's something that you're looking for, like a different way of doing teacher appreciation, or a different way to do some sort of fundraising, or a different way to do a STEM program, be sure and look on the Facebook page for National PTA, and then we have a Facebook page for PTA local leaders. And so they're always there networking with one another to find different ways of doing different events, as well as appreciation and for recognizing members. So always look for that on that social media page. We have Instagram, we have some things on LinkedIn, not all of them, but we do have a Twitter account. So just know that the social media platform is there for you as well. Do we have another?
And don't forget YouTube.
And YouTube, yes.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Patty. I'm with Stratton Elementary here in Colorado Springs. And I just wanted to know if there's a calendar that would give us our due dates, when we're supposed to make sure we have all of these documents in. That would make it tremendously easy to make sure we get everything in on time.
So
Great
we do.
question.
Oh.
No, I'm just saying, great question. Karen?
Right. We do have a local unit handbook. And within that handbook, we do have a calendar of the requirements. Like we have a list of the things that you need to be in good standing. And so in Colorado, we call our standards of affiliation for our local units good standing. And so we will have that listed. And then if there's a due date involved in that standard, then we'll put that in there. So we'll make sure that you get the new copy for this coming year.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Oh, here comes one. Oh, so they told you where to find the handbook.
Right. It is on the website, and I'm gonna push to get that password protected, just because, again, the PTA work that we do, we need to, protect and make, our association, valuable to our members. And yes, we want to be here for all children, but we also need to, I think, respect the work that our PTA volunteers are doing. So anyway, that's just a personal comment there.
So just know that there's lots of support for you. There's lots of people to talk to. Some of them on this particular workshop are here and are on the board and can certainly give you guidance and help and support. Sharon and I are here for you as well. And I would be remiss, actually, without mentioning to you about our national virtual convention coming up in June. really, really consider coming to this convention. It's going to be phenomenal. We've got lots of different workshops that range from local leaders to state leaders to really what PTA is about and how we can make you more successful. We've got a great keynote this year, John Maxwell. So he is my mentor and leadership coach, and I love this man, and he is the #1 coach in the nation and actually the world. So we finally came to an agreement, and he will be talking to us as well. And we have a state leadership institute, which is for state boards only and all of their members. And he will be talking to them as well. So there's lots of things to do. There's lots of ways of connecting with people all across this nation and even over in Europe. So take the time, and registration is not expensive. It's $60. You can get a group rate for 5. If you've got 5 friends together and y'all want to get together, you get like $10 off. So just know we've made it as affordable as we can for you to enjoy this convention. Just lots of great things to know, lots of good leaders to see. We do have elections. If you want to see a process going, we've got bylaws and resolutions that are up for adoption. So it's a very interesting process. All of the education for our resolutions and bylaws will be done previous to the convention. So look for those webinars because there will be no debate because we're virtual and our attendance is so large. We don't have a platform big enough to make sure all that happens in a fair and equitable way. So it's going to be an up and down vote. So we need you there. We need your voice. We need to know what you think and what you need. So always think about this particular event as well as what you've learned and grow from where you are in your state and learning more about national as well. So I would love to see all of you there. It's going to be fun and it's always really interesting as well. So closing out, I just wanted to say thank you so much. We are here always to help you grow. These are our email addresses. You can certainly reach out to us if you've got questions. We're here for you. I'm your national president. I'm just not the national president. I am your president. You and every member of this association elected me to the position that I am in at this point. So it's really important for me to be here for you because, you know, we mentioned earlier, there's no wrong way to PTA. And we mean that as far as engaging with your members. Granted, sometimes they're going to not be totally your friend, right? But we're about everybody and being inclusive and valuing every person that comes to the table, because only when that happens do we really become the best that we can be, is valuing everyone at our schools. And I've had this question to me several times as I've been in the virtual reality with state conventions, and everyone says, well, how do you know if you're representative? And I said, well, look at your student population. Your board should be representative of your student population. So always try to engage those. And right out of the box, please don't ask them to volunteer 40 hours a week. Just be their friend, create a relationship, and then they'll do whatever you ask. Trust me. It is all about us just building relationships. We've really learned during this pandemic, right? It's not about the rules and the regulations. It's about the actual relationships that we build with our communities and giving the support that they need. So know that we're here for you, and just whatever we can help. Karen's here. You had your treasurer here, Elaine. And so there's just several leadership individuals here, and we're all about supporting you and making you successful. So whatever we can do for you, just let us know.
Thanks so much, Leslie and Sharon, for presenting this and helping people understand our relationships and just reinforcing the fact that we are here for them. So thanks so much.
Well, thank you for having us.
Thank y'all. Have a great weekend and have a great year, rest of the year. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.